so one of the things I want to talk about today, as Sean talked about, is really trying to use data within the system to help you with your decisions. And I suppose it's really relating that to the product, and where in the product and how in the product we're planning to do that. Some of it's here already and was introduced in version 8. And there are 2 areas where we're looking to improve that. One in 8.2 relating to forms, and secondly a subsequent feature that I'll talk about later on. So the first one really was one of the problems with the key challenges around data is firstly, everyone starts becoming, when it comes to the web, everyone sort of has an opinion. And particularly, I think it's probably even more prevalent in universities, because it's suddenly like, it's the usual thing, I've invented a time machine, and I'm an academic who's amazing about, like, I don't know, special types of plastic. And then suddenly I want to have a conversation with you about the website, and it's sort of like, everyone thinks they're amazing in the plastic sector, and then suddenly they think that means that they're now an expert in the web. So one of the problems is how do you overcome that, and how do you manage that change? And I think the same happens within organizations outside higher education as well. So you have this problem where everyone's become a digital expert, and I suppose they also have their kids who are telling them, like, what they should be doing and so on. And that can really, this is for many of you here with your strategies, how do you manage that? Because it's sort of time consuming. And often as well, is that sometimes when you have problems, it's where senior managers are actually interested in data. Often it can be the wrong data, it can be the vanity metrics. They really aren't that important in the greater scheme of things. Then in terms of, you have very limited time and resources. And I think that's absolutely probably one of the biggest problems and the challenges for many of you here, is that you have the issue of, although you're really providing one of the most important services to your organizations, I'm sure many of you would agree, and we can discuss this later over a few drinks, and it's typically when I've been at other conferences, it can be a lively part of the conversation, is if you look at the amount of budget and time and resources given to the web versus its importance, it's usually completely out of sync. And I think that's something that's absolutely critical. And the final part is that sometimes it can be hard to get the data. So, how much is the web contributing to the organization, the website, and so on? Because often, when you apply for budget to maybe do, say, a web transformation project, it could be an uphill battle. So, the way I sort of think about it is, well, hang on, okay, so there's no funding to revitalize the website. Okay, well, let's actually save money and turn off the website, because that's the easiest way to see how much impact. Let's turn off the website for a year and see, how much of a difference it makes. And I think everyone here is like, oh, Pierre is stupid, he's, had Irish coffees over lunch and he's talking nonsense. But we all know that it's going to have an impact on your organization, right? That'd be a fair point. But yet, no one could put numerical value to say, well, how much is it worth to the organization? And I think that's the challenge. I think that's a personal challenge for many of you. If you can start using money and, I suppose, money-related metrics to show what the value of what you're doing, it's suddenly people's ears start to pick up. And I suppose that's what we're finding, where organizations can do this very, very well. It's really having a big impact. And one of the people I mentioned earlier on was a guy whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was very nice, and he's from the University of British Columbia. What he did was he worked with the finance department to look at a numerical cost or value for every student that applies and is accepted into the university. Because it might just be the tuition fees, it could be other revenue and so on. Particularly in the US, the revenue can be much wider, including accommodation and food and all that sort of stuff. So that figure came from the finance department. What they then did was they then looked at what is the value of an inquiry, because you'll have a conversion rate over it. So it's almost like using sales techniques to find, well, what's the total value of a student studying with us for 4 years, or somebody booking a flight or taking out car insurance. And how valuable is that inquiry? And then starting to measure that over and over and over again so that you can use that as a metrics. What they're finding now is that when he now reports to senior management, he's actually giving a dollar amount as to how much the website is contributing every month to what they're doing. And what he said was, that's working brilliantly, because then now when he goes for a project to say, well, we can increase that by 10% or 5%. He'd say, well, that's actually going to make a $50,000 or $100,000, $500,000 impact on what we're doing. So those in public sector and government organisations, the same as in the UK, for example, they have there's a centrally decided figure that says the cost of doing a transaction online versus offline. And what they do is organisations that are doing it well are using that metric to show, well, we're now moving more transactions online, therefore we're actually saving this amount of money. And it's both, I suppose, getting away from vanity metrics and getting away from metrics that sound a bit made up to actual solid numbers that you can use in your own business cases internally. So I talked about this earlier on. Obviously this is a key part of our strategy, but really the measurement bit is what I'm going to talk about today. Really there's three elements of the system where we're really working on very, very hard. The first one is what's called performance dashboards, and I'm going to show you a live demonstration of that in a moment. The second one is where we want to go in relation to form reports. So we obviously, you saw, and there's quite a lot of interest, I think certainly from the Twitter feed as well, lots of questions around the form builder. But we have a vision as to what we want to do in terms of the types of reports available around the forms. And I'd like to share that with you. I'd like to get feedback from you, and both now and later on over a few pints, as I said, all ears to hear what your feedback would be on it. Those are the two key areas that are sort of quite imminent, or either available right now or quite imminent. And then there's some other areas that I'll talk about just at the very end, or in terms of well into the future, but how to optimize, how to improve things. Hopefully we won't move it all the way up here. I think you're all very lucky to be here apparently, because Dublin Airport was closed, so loads of flights are being diverted. So once the building doesn't come down, we should be fine. It hasn't happened so far, so hopefully we won't be blown away. So really that's quite important to what we're doing. So as I mentioned earlier, Swinburne University, 32% increase in undergraduate inquiries within 4 days. But to do that, you have to measure the data beforehand. So I think this is sometimes forgotten about, and we're including a lot more in our professional services projects, is to spend the short while before you start doing a project or an improvement piece of work to actually collect the data. Because it's too late afterwards, or you might be able to collect it in the same way retrospectively. Without knowing how you're performing beforehand, it's very hard, or it can be tricky to then show what the uplift is. And I think this is sometimes people are so focused on, let's call it the web transformation project, they forget what it was like before, or it's not very tangible as to what the results were like. For example, in the US, there's another example. At Sacred Heart University, we got an 18% increase in people attending open days to their campus, using a lot of the techniques I'm going to talk about here. And some of them that, say, Laura has spoken about before, about content targeting, and a lot of the features that we're building around that are helping people get these things to perform. But ultimately, it's about measuring beforehand. I think for many organizations, if you're not doing this, you can really get a great rise in performance of certain activities. Things like inquiries, registering for open days. The same thing we said even about conversion for commercial products like insurance. Simple things like the colour of the button that says, I want an insurance quote, can make a difference. And at the end, I'll actually share some really good books on this topic, the titles of them. I won't read them out or anything like that for you. But definitely, I would say, top-notch books in this sort of area. So really, this is the quote that I think is really so critical these days. Without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And I think this, certainly in a higher education scenario, it's often everybody is the expert, right? So the best way, certainly when you're talking to pure academics, where they might not quite get the whole sort of web strategy. A lot of academics and others, data provided is provided in the right way. And I was talking to the guys from the Central Statistics Office about statistics, obviously, and things like that over lunch. And I think it is about making sure that that data is very strong, correct, and people have trust in it. So really, it's about using that data then to really make sure that from your own perspective, you're able to transform your organization into an organization that's constantly improving the website, constantly waving your own flag to show the performance improvements, and ultimately getting you guys into a status of hero or heroine within the organization. Up on people's shoulders, I can't believe how well John or Jean did in improving X, Y, and Z. So when they start doing the bronze statues of you in your organization, so Piero foresaw this back in 2015. And I'm really glad I listened to his presentation and brought some things home. So it is so key. So one of the problems is, and what we've solved in version 8, this is a feature that we initially brought in the first release of version 8. I would say at the moment, because a lot of people are transferring over, I would say it's probably not on people's top priority list, because obviously people are migrating from 7 to 8 and there's lots of new features. But one of the challenges we wanted to have is that, particularly with, say, with Google Analytics, and I actually particularly sought out the older interface to Google Analytics. I think I sort of find it more useful than the new updated one. But one of the problems is that there's just a lot of data, and it's not necessarily, the data is very, very different to the actual decision-making process. And I think there's very much a chasm between the two. And I think what we wanted to do within the system is take advantage of the data that you have, but present it in a way where you're able to take very small slices of that data to build up a story and to build up a decision-making process. I'm going to talk about a particular example where we put a lot of effort into, and it's had some great results. So the chance you have that data, you can also configure it very well. People, you may have set it properly, like conversion funnels and so on. Where this is getting very interesting is with Google Universal Analytics. How many of you are familiar with the difference between Google, say, Analytics and Google Universal Analytics? How many of you would be familiar? There's only a few hands going up. Maybe a few of you are like, you're really experts, but you just don't want to tell anyone. But so the difference is, a big change that happened in the last 2 years is Google, and it does involve you changing your tags, the Google tag on your website, but you probably should be using Google Tag Manager to help you with that. So Google Analytics and its days as product was called Urchin, it all came from a web point of view. So the whole idea about Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, is you can put in trackers not just on your website, but you can actually do it across lots of web channels and digital channels, but you can also do it even on sort of physical transactions. So what they're saying, I've seen them present, for example, to people in the retail industry, because we're working hard to make sure that we keep up to date with what's going on in lots of industries to take the best things that we're seeing. But they, for example, that people are doing smart stuff. It's almost like, obviously Google wants to sort of own your profile, and of course they don't have any sinister reasons for doing any of that, but obviously to try and sell advertising and the rest. But what they're trying to say is, well, look, we'll give you a store of where you can collect information on activities. So they can, for example, if you had it, say, set up in a very integrated way, they can sort of track you from what you bought in a shop with a loyalty card right through to you visited the website and logged in with your loyalty card number as an account. And that's the whole idea of Universal Analytics, is it's across device, across the digital and physical world, collecting information on, let's call it a person ID or a profile, and then using that to try and sort of hone down that, not just like, okay, well, the bounce rate on the website is X, but you could say, well, the bounce rate is very, very high, or say if you don't complete the shopping cart process is very high, but those people actually have gone into the shop and physically bought the stuff that they wanted to buy online. For some reason, they didn't want to do it online. They just wanted to, they're very like us, the young kids, and wanted to get out of the house. It's like, oh no, the website's not working. Oh, that gets me out of the house for an hour. So it's, the whole idea is across the different channels, and both the physical and the digital world. So what we're trying to do is that we're trying to link together really and solve two problems. One is that you have a lot of silos of data, and it might go beyond analytics. It could be like CRM data. And I'll talk through, as I said, a specific example here where we've done some really interesting work. It also could be your, let's call it your e-commerce, your student information system, your ERP system. It's about, you might have other data about the number of transactions that are happening and the value of those transactions. So once you've started collecting that data, and I'm going to show you in a moment how we can present it in version 8, it's then about doing more and more testing and improvement. So Laura talked about earlier on about the whole area of content targeting, and we're seeing some great results. You know, like for example, very simple examples that, like, if I have searched for, say, a business graduate diploma, and I keep coming back to the website, but it keeps talking about how amazing the science department is. You know, if you have content that's more related to them, it's actually going to increase conversion. And these are really in terms of our vision where we're looking to try and solve a lot of problems. So in practice, how does this all sort of come together? What we're trying to do with the dashboards functionality, and I said is in version 8.0, and if you have any questions, Mark of Form Builder fame is also a key person behind the dashboards. This is something that we really want to get feedback from yourselves, the types of systems where you want to integrate in and pull the data out of. What I'm going to do is show you how you can build custom dashboards to create and see the picture of what is happening in your organization. It's not to replace Google Analytics, it's trying to just give you the little slice of the story to help you make better decisions. And it could be simple things like, what courses are popular? How many of those courses are people inquiring about? Are people actually, after inquiring, are they bothering to apply? And so on. Or the same, like with an airline like Aer Lingus, it's very straightforward. You know, how many people from starting the search for a flight are actually converting and purchasing that flight? And are there things you can do to increase that conversion? Once the window stays intact, I think we should be all fine. So really it's about linking together a lot of these different systems. So what we're trying to do, and I'm going to jump over into it now, is show you the dashboards and the setup and what's possible here. So if you just give me one moment, I'll just jump into it here. So all of this is live here. Hopefully you can see it okay. Oh no, sorry, that's the reports. Mark. Oh yeah, sorry. We did actually create a bookmark with it, so user error as opposed to a technical error. So one of the things you'll see, as Hugh mentioned earlier on, is that there's, over on the side here, we've broken out the navigation. One of the areas obviously is measure. And under this is, you have an area called performance dashboards. And the idea is you can create numerous dashboards and slices of dashboards depending on your needs. So in a university setup, it could be something like course inquiries, undergraduate, postgraduate, alumni fundraising, and obviously in other organizations, it really can match it. You can create these dashboards very, very easily. These are just some very simple dashboards, but the whole idea is you can pull in data. So what we're trying to do here is not trying to be, let's call it the big data repository for all of this data. What we're trying to do is link into the various sources and potentially connect it together. Now luckily, Google Analytics and Google Universal Analytics in particular is now become very, very strong at being a great source and sort of almost like the place where you can start stitching this data together. So provided you integrate Google Universal Analytics, you can start to actually report on this completely out of the box. And I'm going to show you literally how quickly you can do that. But you can have we have another, say, sample dashboard here, and this has like just tons and tons of little widgets, and it's just almost like showing you different types of data that you might want to pull in. So you could have, for example, here, number of inquiries. using, say, the online forms over a period of time, or it could be number of people visiting the form page, number of people visiting, completing the form. Where then you might want to include the Google Analytics code is in your, let's call it ERP, right? So say somebody's registering for a short course, you can put the Google Analytics code just in that application to say, I want to spot people starting the application process, to completing it, to actually being accepted when that data comes through the CRM. Obviously in e-commerce it's really simple. You know, you have the start, you're visiting the site, filling the basket, completing the purchase, and so on. But you've got a ton of widgets here, and it's actually very, very easy to create these. So I just want to give you a very quick insight into how easy it is to do it. One of the nice features, if you haven't seen it, is the little bookmarks feature up here. Is that commonly used features, you can bookmark right to the feature and almost create your own little custom menu. So one of the great things here with these dashboards is that what we wanted to do is make it very, very configurable. So we have you can set up different dashboards. Every dashboard is has a number of components in it. And in this case, we're linking it into a particular Google Universal Analytics account, and there's a few other configuration options here. So in this dashboard, I've got these different components. And what I hope today is, like, you know, there's a lot of details to how you can slice and dice the data, you know, naming the graphs, what type of graphs, what the labels will work, you know, all this sort of stuff. But I hope at least to inspire you with some of the ideas how you can use this feature. Because it's definitely one that where people have used it, they're getting really good, they're really getting good insight into their information. But I know over time it's going to become more and more important, so we want to get guidance from yourselves as to, you know, how best we can help you. So say for example here, with this particular report, you can create new widgets, or you can add an existing, let's call it, little component onto the page. But say for example here, if I want to bring in, say, very simple data such as visitors over time, it's all highly configurable here. You tell it the name, the type of data. Then you start using these things in Google Universal Analytics called dimensions, which are used to sort of slice the data. And you need to become a little bit of an expert in sort of the Google Universal Analytics ways of slicing data. And it's very easy once you get your head around it. There's a lot of different, let's call it, variables that you can use here, and it sort of makes sense. You can segment, you can filter, you can sort different data. So what a lot of people are doing is they're starting to, well, the people who are starting to use this are starting to build up things like pipelines, where they can start getting an insight as early as possible that things are improving or that they're not improving. But it's very easy for you to play around. You can set up like things like labels, you have XY axes and stuff like that. We're not trying to make this into a business intelligence solution. You know, you can spend $500,000. You know, we'll take your $500,000 and we can go out and party on it. But it's really about giving you an insight into data you already have and less volume of it than if you just sort of gave somebody a login to a Google Analytics account and said, go wild. Because often, like, it's as they call it, the fire hose of data. So this is a really powerful feature in 8.0. So I hope today you get a bit of an insight into what's possible. And you can start thinking about how that might apply in the future. And it's something that I think is really, I have to say, we're really excited about, but one that we really want to get your own feedback on as well. So what I want to do is I want to just jump back into my slides. I have a second. Okay, so the next area that we want to work on, so that's in the product right now. The next one that we want to work on is form response conversion rate analysis. So what our aim is in 8.2 is, so Mark and Gillian showed earlier on that, like, the form results come back and it looks like the content, you know, you have your list of data that's coming back. What we want to do is introduce, and we're doing some work on this at the moment, is to bring this type of report directly into the forms interface. So not very complicated, but giving you a very, very simple insight into how well your forms are doing. So in this case, for example, the aim is to have things like the number of unique views of the form, the number of people converting, Obviously that's a very simple piece of maths where the conversion rate. How many people have abandoned the form? So have started to fill in the form, or we're not sure yet whether it should be the people who've started to fill in the form or people who have viewed the form and haven't filled it out. I think what's interesting is definitely that people who've started to fill it in and have given up. That's probably a valuable number to measure, because then there could be potentially things wrong with the form. I'll talk about that in a moment, about some practical things you can do there. And then really obviously you have the abandonment rate. So if you were to look at, okay, well my key performance indicator is I need to get more inquiries, I need to get more people signed up for a certain product, or to buy a certain product, or to sign up for a certain course. It's these metrics you want to improve. So there's a couple of areas that I think we're seeing where you can make really big improvements in these numbers. And the aim is with this sort of dashboard linked to the forms that you'll be able to see where the issues are. The first one is your form can be too long, right? So one client, we're working on a new project at the moment, to request their prospectus is like, because of the CRM we're using, it must be about 20 fields to fill out. A simple thing that anybody can do here without needing any of our technology is get your forms shorter. Even if your CRM system says we need 20 fields for you to create a record of who this person is, start off with just the basics. Start off with their name, their email address, and maybe one other detail. And then you can always email them later on as they progress and say, actually, can you fill in to help you a bit more? We'd love to know what courses you're interested in, or so on. You can start to build that up over time. You don't need to ask the obvious, you don't need to ask these like huge number of questions just to sort of start a relationship with them. The second one is, and one that we want to introduce probably a little bit further into the future, is where we can start seeing where the abandonment is happening. Now, what I would say is, right now there are some tools that you can just plug into forms that actually do this. Products like Formissimo, if you've played around with it. Until we've got our stuff together on some of this, it's a great little tool that you can play around with. Even if you run it for a period of time, even for their trial period, you'll get a lot out of it. For example, what it does is, and what we want to do, is we want to be able to see, as people are filling in each field in the form, we want to see where they're starting and when they're stopping. And in practice, not just stopping, like pausing, but actually abandoning. And then looking at some metrics about, well, why are they abandoning? Like maybe that field is just far too big to be completed on a mobile device. And what we did is we ran some of these metrics even on our own website, and we found that, now obviously the amount of traffic relative to yourselves is much smaller, but we were able to actually make some real improvements. We found that, for example, one of the fields was slightly, it was slightly acting up in a version of Google Chrome. So anyone using Google Chrome trying to fill in the form, they tended to stop at this particular field. The other thing that you can find is sometimes that the validation can just be too strict. Right? So the problem is that often when you have too much validation, that can actually, like how many e-commerce, like say an e-commerce company in the US that are shipping to Ireland or Germany, have they really thought about it that actually the postcodes are different? So that's something that can be a real blocker with your forms, is making sure that the validation isn't too strict. And I'm sure you've all come across this, like where even when they ask for postcode, some want the space, some might, if they just want it in a particular way, or telephone numbers, where you're trying to figure out like, what's the acceptable way of putting in my telephone number, And you've done it all right, but just they won't accept it. And that's something that we're seeing is something to really think about. The other thing is the color of the submission button, right? There's a lot of work that's being done on this. The answer is orange. There are different colors that get you different conversion rates depending on what you're trying to do. What they found is, through a lot of research, is that orange or a type of light blue will get you the highest conversion rate on a form. But it does depend on what you're asking them to do. It also, the text, you have the whole submit button. Is it submit? Is it like, and what they actually find, I'm going to show you, one of the books talks about this a lot, and something to think about. So our aims with these features is through some very basic analytics is to help you improve those forms. And if you put a numerical number on, say, the form response, so it's not like somebody's buying, you know, a product. If you can't put a number on, but try to, you can use that as a way of showing, well, actually, we made some changes to the website, and we've had a financial positive impact of X. And given that many of you are in very large organizations, that number can be really big. And suddenly, you know, you're then a bit of a hero where you're saying, well, actually, we got this number from finance, we applied it to our maths, and we've actually saved £60,000 by making this change. Or we have got that revenue, and so on. And we're seeing people who can use that. It's a great way to help you, particularly with the funding challenges. And I know it was definitely a challenge for many of you to get budget to visit, particularly for those of you coming in from overseas. And it's trying to link what you're doing back to numerical improvement. So that's a big area that that we've done a lot of work on. The other big part of what we're doing as well is what Laura talked about earlier on about the personalization side of things. It's not just optimizing the forms, but it's actually using extra information that you have, or beacons of data. So I know beacons mean something in mobile apps, but myself and Laura were trying to figure out what to call it. We just thought there's like things that ping out as you go along. But if you can build up a profile and then specifically target, so it's almost like the flower shop knowing when you've screwed up at home, so you can send flowers to your wife. You know, if they can just at the right moment in time figure out that you have a need and they can do something that you can really help increase conversion. So one of the stories, just to finish up on, we've done a lot of work with we have really good clients in Houston Community College. The guy Joe Conway, an Irish guy who's been over in Texas for many, many years. Well, the problem they had was that they didn't have visibility of what courses people were interested in until it was far, far too late. Okay, so what ended up happening was, because of how their community college is funded, and this is like 60,000 people, students in this community college. It's like one of those very, very big community colleges. They had no visibility as to what students were interested in. They had no visibility then. It was too late then for them to cancel the next run of the same class. So it was costing them a lot of money. So what we did was set up some very good metrics. Firstly, we looked at very basic analytics. How many people were searching and visiting for the pages for particular courses? If nobody's visiting the web page for a particular course, provided that it's not a course that's targeting an audience who wouldn't be very web savvy, provided that it's a fairly standard undergraduate course, if people aren't visiting it, the chances of people being interested in applying are probably pretty low. The next thing is, well, in their case, they have a direct application. So basically, people apply directly to the university or to the community college. So if people haven't inquired about the community college, then there's not going to be interest in it. Have they started the application process? Have they finished the application process? So we created a very, very simple graph to show what would be called in sales terms, like your sales funnel. And the sales funnel showed how many people were visiting a particular course page, how many people were inquiring, how many people were starting to apply, and how many people had applied. And what it did was it gave what really were digital marketing people who had no visibility to the student numbers and the recruitment cycle, visibility into where they should spend their effort. What are courses that they need to market more to get the numbers up, but well in advance before it's too late. It's a little bit late when you get data in, say, August or July to say, oh, actually, there wasn't many people applying, and then you have to scramble, like, for example, in the UK situation where you have clearing, to basically fill spaces. If it gives you visibility of what's happening earlier on, you actually can impact the result. So you can start to see the trend very early on. This is simple stuff. It's just about slicing the data, in this case on a course-by-course basis, so they can see what courses were performing and weren't performing. And they could either push hard on the digital marketing, or they could, on the other hand, cancel something that if it's just not very, typewriter maintenance this year mightn't be so popular, but maybe social media marketing is the hot topic. So I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into what's there at the moment and where we're going, particularly with the forms conversion. There's 3 books if you're interested in these topics. These are probably like the 3 sort of books. I think there's a lot of books when you go into Amazon. It's a bit like searching for leadership. There's like 1 million books about these topics. These would definitely be some of the best ones out there. And also we'll have the presentations up there, and I presume you're all taking pictures of me and not the slides. Hi guys. These would definitely be the ones to look at, and certainly you should test that. The whole idea is constantly testing and tweaking. There's no big risks. Try something out. If it doesn't work, bring it back to the way it was. On that note, I hope that's resonated with many of you, and if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer them. Any questions, or any interest in sharing some experiences, or